Thank you. Hi, folks. Good to see you. It's kind of a big weekend for us up in Plymouth. We have this little thing coming up called Thanksgiving, and on Saturday we're expecting about 200,000 people to be in Plymouth at our celebration. We are having a parade with over 2,000 marches, 21 floats, and Channel 5 will be filming the whole thing, so if you can't make it, turn on your TV. Guys, let me give you a little idea about where we came from, okay? My wife and I run the Jenny Interpretive Center, and we talk about the Pilgrim story. And we talk about the fact that our country was founded on Christian principles by the Pilgrims. And Pastor Steve has already talked to us about the Scrooby Covenant, where the Pilgrims separated from the Church of England and started their own church in Scrooby, England. And now here's the thing, if you lived in England at that time, and King James was the king, you had to belong to his church. You had no choice. If you didn't, you'd have an illegal church. Now, what we did, the Pilgrims, is John Robinson separated from the church, and they had church in their homes. But guys, you could belong to the church, but you didn't have to. It was your choice. But if you're going to choose to belong to the church, follow the rules. This is pretty simple. Yeah. See, because you can't have a society without law, without rules. You just can't have it. And so we started this church, and as Steve told us, they committed everything to the church. Why did they do that? Because they made a covenant with God that they would honor one another in love. And because that covenant is so strong, they wouldn't break it. Right. See, I did an interview with a gentleman a few years ago, and he asked me, Leo, what's the big deal about a covenant? I said, well, you know what, Clem? Here's the big deal. If I were to make you a promise and I broke it, who cares? Other than you. If I make a covenant under God, guys, we're in a whole different place now. You better honor that covenant. And they took it so seriously, they made that covenant, and they separated from the Church of England and had church in their homes of William Brewster, who lived in the house owned by the king. So he's having an illegal church in a house owned by the king. And then when they came to Plymouth, they made another covenant called the Mayflower Compact. And when they wrote the Mayflower Compact, they changed the order of the power structure. See, back in England, the power structure went from God to the king to the people. But in the Mayflower Compact, the power structure goes from God to the people to the king. So now the leader is beholden to the people. But with this, guys, comes a responsibility. We have to put the right people in office if we're going to make this thing work. But the point is, we changed the whole power structure. So now, for example, if I were back then, and I broke a law, and William Bradford, the governor, broke the same law, we'd both get the same punishment. But not King James. See, King James was above the law. He didn't have to follow his own law. Not only that, King James thought he was God. See, we call this thing the divine right of kings. And because of that, he felt, well, he was God's representative on earth. Well, guys, I'll tell you what, if I tell you you're God's representative on earth, pretty soon you're going to think you're God. And that's what happened to the king. So we left, and we built this other covenant. And guys, the covenant still holds today. That's right, man. We do the same things. We have a civil government now where the people are responsible. And we have to follow that covenant. And as long as we follow the covenant, we're going to be okay. You see, our God is a God of order. My wife and I live on a little river down there in Plymouth where the Pilgrims built the plantation. And every April, we have the herring come up out of the ocean, and they spawn up in our pond. And last year, we had over 6 weeks, 250,000 fish go up the river. And they're gone at the second week of May. Just like clockwork. That's order. God created that. I have people say to me all the time, boy, is that something, boy, were they lucky or what? And you know what I say to them, or what? They call that the providence of God, God working in their lives. So we have a God of order. And the more we stay under that order, that covenant, the more order we're going to see. And the further we move away from the covenant, the more chaos we're going to see.
That's right.
Anybody notice a little chaos lately? We're moving away from the covenant.
Yes.
And until we turn back, we will not get away from the chaos. Guys, we have a king, and his name is Jesus. We have no earthly king. That covenant has to stay under God for us to keep the country where it is today. And I'll be honest, guys, I teach this stuff, and I teach how our pilgrims passed this on to the founding fathers. And they wrote the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. But I get a lot of pushback. I get things that people say to me, oh, but they weren't Christians. Most of them were deists. Now, what's a deist? Someone that thinks there's a God, but he doesn't hang around with us. He's just up there being God. He doesn't pay any attention to us. So what I've been told is Thomas Jefferson is a deist. Well, how could he possibly write the Declaration of Independence if he was a deist?
I agree.
Certain inalienable rights? That's a deist? Benjamin Franklin was a deist. But when the Constitutional Convention broke down, and they weren't getting the Constitution written, he stood up and he addressed George Washington. If a sparrow can't fall to the earth without God's notice, who do we think we are that we can start a country without God's help? I do not think that is a deist.
Amen.
But what we like to do is change history.
Yeah.
Rewrite history. And when we rewrite history, we can get rid of God. See, for us, for what's going on today, God's got to go. See, we can't have God. Because, but now, help me here, once God's gone, what happens? Something has to fill the void, right? There's a void now. We have no God. Something's got to fill the void. And what fills the void? The state.
That's right. Here comes God.
The state wants us to worship it,
Yes.
not God.
That's right.
And when we worship the state,
We're in trouble.
we go back to tribalism.
That's right.
We go back to favorites. We go back to people being unequal. We have to have God in the picture or nobody is equal. We have to have that to get back to where we are, to get away from the chaos, and to bring our country back to where it belongs. This is a Christian country based on Christian principles, and guys, that is good. Because Christianity is inclusive. You do not need to be a Christian to reap the benefits
That's exactly right.
of a Christian society.
That's right. That's right.